caldo más espesito.
Claro,
¿Vale? Que diluye, eso por no hablar del pimentón y otros menesteres, claro.
Y eso no es que lo haya hecho, yo lo he hecho allí porque a otros autopistas yo les veía por Europa en invierno hacer esas prácticas, sobre todo a los camioneros.
Venga, voy a dar un premio. Si alguien me dice, aquí hay muchos tres platos que se hacen con naranja en Hungría. ¿Tenéis? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ya está.
Buenas tardes. Muchísimas gracias a todos por el esfuerzo que habéis hecho en intentar comprimir la comida lo máximo posible. Me consta que hay gente que se ha quedado sin postre. Lo siento mucho, pero seguro que durante la tarde y esta noche tendremos la oportunidad de endulzarnos el día. Antes de dar paso a esta presentación en primicia mundial, quiero recordaros que en la web del Encuentro tenéis las indicaciones para poderos descargar las aplicaciones para iPhone y para Android. Bueno, esta mañana yo os he dicho que nosotros teníamos una app, una presentación en primicia mundial, sin ánimo de confundir a nadie. Yo para esta presentación quiero llamar al escenario a Luis Rojo, que es uno de los gerentes de EducaRed, que venga aquí conmigo, y yo creo que me voy a tomar un descanso, me voy a tomar unas vacaciones porque me lo merezco. Yo sí me hubiera tomado un postre.
Hace 2 años, aquí en el Encuentro de EducaRed, presentamos el portal EducaRed.org, que fue la reunión de todos los portales que teníamos de EducaRed en todos los países en uno solo, y ahora tenemos más que un portal, tenemos un portalón. Y desde EducaRed, desde la Fundación Telefónica, nos encanta proporcionaros herramientas tecnológicas que os ayuden a mejorar como docentes, a hacer mejor vuestra función de mejorar como personas a los alumnos que tenéis delante. Y hoy vamos a presentar una herramienta que sois los primeros que vais a ver. Con todos ustedes, EducaRed. Se merece algo más que un aplauso. Así hacemos en la Fundación Telefónica cosas difíciles, imposibles a veces. Pero esta sí que va a ser una herramienta en la que participaréis, aprenderéis, lo usaréis en clase y todo el contenido lo tendréis a vuestra disposición en cualquier dispositivo móvil. Cualquier dispositivo móvil. Pero, al ser una primicia mundial, todo lo que va a pasar aquí, todo, no puede salir de aquí. Por lo tanto, por primera vez, Fundación Telefónica os va a pedir una cosa que nunca ha pedido y nunca más va a volver a hacer. Es que desconectéis todos los dispositivos móviles. Por favor, hay que desconectar ahora todos los dispositivos móviles. ¡Protesta! Hay que desconectar
mira, lo del móvil ya me parece una tontería, pero de verdad no entiendo cómo va a ayudarnos esto a mejorar la calidad de la enseñanza.
Oiga, señor.
Por favor, un poco de respeto. Bueno, yo simplemente estoy haciendo una sola pregunta. Sí, pero vamos a ver. Lo único que necesitamos es calidad en la enseñanza. Yo quiero saber de qué manera vamos a ayudar esto a mejorar esa calidad en la enseñanza, nada más. Pero ¿por qué no apague el móvil que está pidiendo el señor y ya está? Lo que hay que hacer, es enseñarnos a entrar. Este señor tiene razón. Hay que encontrar la solución para modernizar la educación. No me funciona el proyecto y no lo arregla el director. El wifi se ha vuelto a colgar y la
poquito más
very much. I arrived a little late because my flight was delayed.
Dr. Mitra, after watching your presentation, the logical question as an educator is, what comes next? How can we implement this? Or, in your scientific perspective, what would be the next step to do?
Well, what I said towards the end of my talk was that reading comprehension is probably the most important skill in primary education. So what I'm working on right now is how can children read very quickly? At what age can they start reading? And not just reading, but reading to understand. So that's one part of the work. The other part is that how can schools integrate this kind of inquiry method into the curriculum? See, often teachers will tell me that I understand what you're saying, but I have a curriculum, I have a timetable, where will I get the time to do this? So it's for school principals to figure out a way so that there is unstructured play time for children. You know, just as you have play time, which is out in the play field, you must have play time for your mind. Okay, and that's really what I'm talking about. If you saw all of that.
Sure.
For emerging technologies like Brazil and other ones in South America?
Well, I just spent quite some time in Chile and Uruguay. Earlier I have spoken to teachers in Brazil and Argentina, and I think South America is really very ready for this method. The only thing that I want to point out is that I'm not trying to say that teachers are not required. I'm trying to say that teachers don't need to provide information. Children can find that out for themselves. Teachers need to make the big questions which will attract children. But in that whole South American Spanish-speaking milieu, I think this method has an enormous potential to grow if the government see the sense of it.
Professor, yeah, you mentioned that the precondition is that children know how to read. Now, in Latin America, we have the problem that 40% of kids at around 8th grade don't know how to read. Is this method potentially useful, even to make them learn how to read and manage language?
Well, that's a wonderful question that you asked. That is what I'm working on. The reason why I am in Boston right now, and I'm visiting at the MIT Media Lab on a research project to find out if children can teach themselves to read.
Tengo una consulta. Soy profesor de matemática del Perú. Profesor Abel Ortega Luna. Fíjese que en mi país el gobierno está preocupado en cómo hacer que los docentes, los mejores docentes se mantengan en el aula. Pero existe una dificultad. Cada vez que los docentes son de mayor calidad, abandonan el aula. ¿Cuál sería la sugerencia que se le puede dar?
Yeah, that's what I started my talk with. See, teachers are human beings, so they also want a good quality of life. So you can't blame them if they say, if I get a better job, then I'll go away. So what happens is that the really good ones go away. There may be exceptions, one or two who are really dedicated, but that's not the general rule. So how can we solve this problem? I don't think that by training teachers you can solve this problem. You make a teacher very good and he will leave. So the only way you can do it is to enable the children to get good education from an average teacher. Well, the first change is on skill education. Now, for a long time, it was thought that skills cannot be learned by yourself. You cannot teach yourself to become a carpenter. You need to see a good carpenter or a good plumber or that sort of thing. What YouTube has done is it has changed that. Because today you can learn how to cook by looking at YouTube. It shows you, okay, put this vegetable here, turn it until it's this color, now add this. Okay. IKEA has converted carpentry into a non-issue.
To an everyday thing.
Yeah, I mean everybody's a carpenter. You just fix it together. So skill education is changing rapidly because of the internet. If you have a car and you've got a flat tire and you want to know how to change the tire, if you have a mobile phone with the internet on it, take you 5 minutes. Go on, there'll be a little video which will show you what to do. Okay. Earlier, it would have taken you hours, it would have taken you hundreds of euros, you would have had to go and call somewhere and get a mechanic. So the audio-visual nature of the internet has suddenly converted the whole learning experience completely. Earlier, learning used to be equal to reading. That you read a book and you learn something. But today that's not necessarily true. Learning can be listening, learning can be seeing. So that's the change that audiovisual has made. Well, first of all, I haven't actually worked in Kenya, but the experiment that we are trying now is happening just outside Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, in a similar location where there is no electricity, so you could easily try this. You see, tablets are getting very cheap, okay? And just get any free software on reading, English reading, anything, doesn't matter. Children are not particular about quality, okay? And then just give the tablet to the children. Don't even tell them how to turn it on, okay? And just watch what happens.
Have you tried your experiments with teachers? Can they learn by themselves?
Teachers? Teachers, well, I'll put it this way. Adults find it difficult to work together because they're afraid of making mistakes in front of other adults. So it's very fashionable for an adult to say, I don't understand technology, so so that sort of thing. So, so the answer to your question is that no, it doesn't work. But teachers can learn from children.
Wow.
Brazil? Okay.
Congratulations, amazing.
São Paulo.
Thank you.
And he's Gerardo. He's a
Very nice to meet you.
Good to
from
meet you.
Peru.
Actually, I'm in Peru in May. Can't remember which university. I was awarded an honorary doctorate. At,
Católica?
No, it's San Marcos.
Yes, San Marcos.
Is that the one?
Yeah,
Okay.
it could be.
So it's their 50th, so I have a chance. I haven't been to Peru before, so I'm looking forward to Machu Picchu. Oh, are you?
Yes.
Well, great. I haven't been, so I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. So have a seat here.
Yes.
Do you talk about the new society, the new humanity?
Yes.
Do you think the school and the university, the education fail about the Occupy Wall Street, Occupy London, Occupy Tokyo, everywhere? What do you think about it?
Well, I think, one of the challenges with schools and universities is that they, on the one hand, they need to reflect what's happening in society. But on the other hand, they also have to transform society, right? They have to prepare students for the next generation. And it's really encouraging, for me at least, to see people empowering themselves by, the Middle Eastern, examples of democracy developing, or the Occupy Wall Street things that are going on. Because what this reveals is that students have the tools and the motivation to take charge. And schools need to prepare people for that. They need to prepare people so that they can be active, focused, they can be participants in a global economy. So I'm not sure if that quite gets at your question, but that's the role of schools, where they need to do a better job
of creating or helping students who are creative and who are capable of being global citizens, no longer just citizens of one country or one region, but you really have to think globally.
Let me ask a question, Dr. Simmons. We have just heard on conference from Dr. Sugata Mitra explaining his wonderful experiment using very few computers, one per 4 children. You are mentioning networks. We are talking information, education, technology.
Yes.
How can we put this together for a future that is better than what we have now?
Well, it's a big question, and I don't think we know the answer yet. So I just want to emphasize one of the big things for us, certainly teachers, educators, university faculty, is to start saying we don't know the answer, but we're going to engage with it together, which means that the group of us connected can find an answer. But one of us individually, so I certainly don't have an answer to what that would look like, but I have a desire to connect with others and to interact with others who also want to address that same problem or that same concern. So I think in some regards, one of the biggest things, and Sugata Mitra with his hole-in-the-wall experiment, he provides, I think, a good overview of how students can teach one another. And the open courses that I've done, I think, provide an indication of how people can self-organize so that they can set up groups to teach one another. So out of thousands of people, how can we get a small group that's willing to connect and to interact? So I think that's sort of been the biggest transition that we need to start doing with schools. So the answer is the solution doesn't reside in the head of one person. It resides in the entire network of people. There's bits and pieces of the answer, and we have to do a better job of connecting that and bringing those pieces together.
Thank you.
If we have a model of teaching and learning that dehumanizes the student, then we are moving in the wrong direction. And so the message is that one of the big things, that technology connects us on many levels. It connects information, it connects us to databases and information sources, but what it also does is technology connects us to each other. And because a lot of the information that we need, we don't have, the question we're just looking at. So the way we're going to find answers is by being better connected socially. But it's not just people connecting socially, it's also, the technology plays a role, the information plays a role. But ultimately, in my opinion at least, technology needs to make us more human in order for it to play an important role in the educational process. And if the process of education we have makes us less human, then we're using technology the wrong way.
Question about what you just said. Anthropology. How to teach children that different? I mean, that technology is for them something to get their lives easier, but not to consume their whole life. I don't know if you know what I mean.
I do.
To get that balance between technology and
well, see, and this is, like I said, on the one hand, we want technology to change education, but education also has to change technology, right? There's a relationship where they change each other. And so for students, there is a responsibility on teachers and parents and others to make sure that when you're teaching kids how to use technology, they're not only using it for non-social purposes, which is easy to do. So I'll give you an example. I mean, gaming is tremendously popular, and students can develop wonderful skills when they're gaming. It's a great opportunity to learn. By the same account, though, and there are social dimensions. Games more and more are getting social, where they're doing activities together. But we also have to look at, well, there's a level of critical thinking that everybody needs to have. So, if you're interacting online, you're on Wikipedia, you're on these different sources, you're using mobile devices, you're getting rumors or information off of Twitter, you have to, I think, as an individual, and the role of the education is to make sure that students have the skills to navigate that information complexity so that they don't trust everything they hear, that they interact with others about it, that they develop skills around it. So I think that's the job of the schools is, yes, you want to bring in the technology, but you also want to help students understand the role that technology plays in helping us develop our ideas and our knowledge.
And what about the role of parents then?
Well, that's critical. And I'll give you one example. In the past, I've stated that the big problem we have is almost everything we learn from adults when we're growing up, right? So people teach us, get your elbows off the table, when you, or you got to use a fork and a knife. You can't eat with your hands. So this is what adults do. And when we get to school, teachers teach us, this is how you go to the library. This is how you reference research material and things like that. We're at a very interesting place today because with technology, nobody's teaching the kids how to use technology, which means that the kids are raising themselves on how to use technology. Because nobody is going, in some cases there might be a few, but generally parents are often scared of technology, teachers are scared of it. So what happens is the student goes out and they teach themselves. And parents say, why'd you do that? Why do you, sexting or other cyberbullying, all these things that come up. And then my first response is, well, who taught them? They raised themselves. The problem is with the adults, the parents, the teachers first. I know technology can be scary, but the only way you're going to make sense of it is if you experiment with it. So that's what I mean. The manners that we used to teach, like I said, elbows off the table and that, digitally kids are teaching this themselves because they don't have a parental role model in most cases that helps them understand.
You let them alone.
Exactly. And then we shouldn't be surprised if they make mistakes, right?
Doctor Simi, soy de Chimbote, Perú. La pregunta va centrada sobre todo a la teoría en sí del conectivismo. Sabemos muy bien que el constructivismo se basa en colaboración, en compartir, el alumno construye su aprendizaje, ¿verdad? Entonces, la pregunta es que podríamos hablar de un constructivismo digital en el conectivismo o es diferente. Y si es diferente, me gustaría saber en dónde se centra la diferencia. Muchas gracias por su respuesta.
Well, that's a question that's difficult because the first question is what type of constructivism? Constructivism is, I see it now more as a philosophy, a broad philosophy. I think it's an important philosophy, but you see views like Seymour Papers, constructionism. We have social constructivism. You mentioned digital constructivism. We have radical constructivism. So there's so many different kinds of constructivism. So as I mentioned, I see it more so like a philosophy, the way I would describe positivism or post-positivism as a philosophy. Now, what's unique about connectivism, the argument I make, is that it focuses on the connection all the way through. If you want to look at what's the biological basis of learning, I would say, it's a connection. It's neurons in your brain firing and connecting. If you want to say, how do we develop our understanding about a topic, I would say, it's a connection. You have one idea you learn another one, you bring them together, and then that's your understanding. And then if you were to say, well, what about socially? How do we learn socially? I would say, well, again, it's through connections. I meet a few of you at a conference, we connect online, there might be email exchange. So once again, that connection is the base. So with connectivism, look at it this way, it's the molecule or it's the atom that builds the entire learning process. And it's that one thing, this connection notion for knowledge building, for learning, for social interaction. So that's the distinction with connectivism.
Thank you.
Chicos, una pregunta más. ¿Quién la hace?
Do you think we should invite kids and students to be a speaker note in the event of this education about the technology?
So to have the kids involved?
To be a speaker note.
Oh, yes. You know what? I think one of the things I've seen some conferences do is they bring in panels, right? So you'll have a panel of kids that run different age groups. And there was a great statement, I was mentioning it to someone I was talking about earlier, and just saw this last week. They said to a 2-year-old kid, a magazine is a broken iPad, right? Because that's all they've known, like iPad, and they want to know, why can't I click this image on this magazine? So because we as educators often don't have that experience, we have our history that we bring in, we want to then get their perspective. So I think it's very important that we have students present at conferences, but also that we, posters. I mean, these tables where I've seen this done quite well, where you'll have a group of students that'll have a Xbox set up and they'll have, a screen set up with Facebook. And so you as a participant then, you can observe and you can ask them, what do you do with Xbox? What do you do with Facebook? How do you use Twitter? Because educators, as I stated earlier in the session, we're no longer the people that know everything that pass it to students. We're now people that are also part of the learning process, which means we teach them, but they also teach us, and that's a mindset that we need to adopt.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.